Hello and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee, the show where we chat to people about their career journeys, how they got to their current position and the qualifications and bits and pieces needed to get there. Often on Careers and Coffee, we've been lucky enough to speak to lots of people who have had some really exciting careers. Today, we're taking a slightly different tack in that we're actually talking to people who are right at the very beginning of their journey. So I'm delighted to actually welcome three students from University Technical College, Norfolk, and one of their teachers, Mrs. Sophie Skip, who is the Employment Engagement Coordinator. Today, we're going to have a chat about virtual work experience and what actually taking part in the virtual work experience program is and what it's actually meant to both the school and the students. So without further ado, I'd like to say hello and welcome.
Hello.
Hello. I love the way you come on together.
Hi.
Hello. So lovely to see you and thank you so much for joining us today. So we have Amy, Fred and Holly who are in year 12 or 13 at UTCN. And we have Sophie Skip, who is the Employment Engagement Coordinator. Before we talk to the students, I was just wondering, Sophie, your title is quite an unusual one. Would you like to share with everybody what an Employment Engagement Coordinator is?
Of course. So UTCN is a bit different to schools that part of our curriculum is actually delivered by employers that we work with. So it may be that somebody comes in and does a talk during a lesson, or they might do an exciting activity with students to bring their learning to life. So my job at UTCN is to be the in-between person between employers and students to hopefully provide employers with their workforce of the future and students with the opportunity to meet people who could inspire their future.
That's brilliant. That's great. Thank you. So a really exciting role. Okay, well, chaps, welcome aboard. Lovely to see you. So if we could just start off by just asking the three of you individually, if I just sort of work my way around the screen, what you're currently studying at the moment at UTCN. So at the top of my screen, we've got Amy. So Amy, you're in year 13, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in year 13. I'm in my final year of sixth form. I'm currently studying maths, further maths and physics at A-level.
Excellent, that's great. And Fred?
So I'm studying triple engineering. So unlike most of my friends' courses, it's quite heavily coursework based. So I think I've got like 90% coursework and then 10% exams. That's what I'm studying at the moment.
All right, I think I'd like that. And rather than too many scary exams, I shouldn't say that, should I? And Holly, what are you studying?
I'm in year 12 and I'm doing chemistry, maths, further maths and physics.
Gosh, right, excellent. So well done. Sounds like you've all got some wonderful courses going on. So just to start, virtual work experience. Now, for many people watching, they may not even know what virtual work experience is. And just to give people a bit of background information, what obviously normally happens for usually year 10 and year 12 students is for at least a week in their academic year, usually around about summer for lots of schools, it does tend to vary. They go off and spend a week in industry. Now, it might be that for students who know exactly what they want to do, like I want to be a farmer of some sort, they will go and spend a week on a local farm learning what the sector is like, what the role or the industry, so they can look at different roles within it, is like. For some people, it's a bit more of a generic thing. They don't know what they want to do, so they will go and try, maybe spend a week with their uncle in his engineering company, all sorts of things. So there's lots of different experiences. But of course, with lockdown, that meant that face-to-face work experience didn't happen. So unfortunately, lots of students who would have gained all sorts of amazing experiences, whether it confirmed their choices or whether they said, oh my goodness, that was so tough, never again. But at least it's a terrific learning curve and a great opportunity to understand what the world of work is like. I think, Sophie and I would both agree with that. Now, obviously, for you guys, you were obviously able to do that in year 10. And then when it came to year 12 and lockdown, all of that changed. as a result of not being able to do the face-to-face, some companies started to offer work experience programs, but virtually. So rather than actually physically going into a company, you were in the company via a screen. So just to start off, if I could ask Amy first, what was your first, I should say, how did you hear about virtual work experience? And what was it that made you want to take part in a program?
So I'd never heard of virtual work experience or anything similar to that before, but I was doing a virtual presentation with a friend of mine in front of like our school's local industry liaison group. And I had Helen Clements from Morgan Sindall in the audience. And after we'd finished speaking, she sent us an email inviting us to take part in this virtual work experience that she was hosting in the summer, which I accepted.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that was great. So, and Fred, if I can ask you the same question, how did you first hear about virtual work experience?
So I'm speaking from a perspective where I've already done like in-place work experience, and I found it quite difficult to find because it's like distance to travel and like actually contacting companies. So when Miss Skip approached me, and it was quite a big company, Morgan Sindall, she approached me directly, and I thought, yes, I'll just do it straight away, because at the moment the work placements that I had done were for small little companies, because it's quite hard to find work experience with these bigger companies like Morgan Sindall. So I said yes straight away, pretty much. So.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's something that I think people don't necessarily always appreciate, that it's great to do work experience if the place you want to go happens to be on a bus route, somewhere maybe your parents can drive you to easily, or even somewhere you can get on your bike and get to yourself. But for many of us, particularly in rural communities like Norfolk and Suffolk, to actually physically get to your organisation of choice can be quite a challenge.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I suppose something to highlight the beauty of virtual work experience is all those barriers are gone. And in fact, to actually take part in something virtually, I mean, as it happens like today, you could be actually my next door neighbours, or you could actually be in Australia right now, and it doesn't really make any difference. So yes, I think that's a major plus. And Holly, what was your first experience?
Mine's sort of the same as Fred. So when I joined UTCN, I sort of said I was a little bit interested in construction, and then Miss Skip sort of messaged me like, "Oh yeah, check out this work experience with Morgan Sindall." And it was during the half term, so I was a little bit like, do I want to do it? But no, I was really glad I did it.
Yeah, well, that's great. So you all signed up for, and Amy, am I right in thinking that you signed up for the same virtual work experience program with Morgan Sindall too?
Yeah, we all did kind of separate kind of cohorts of it. So mine was in summer 2020. Fred, yours was October, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And then Holly's was literally like last week. So
that's great. So to do this, so for Amy and Fred, you did you do yours in the summer holidays and then Fred in the autumn half term in October? Is that right?
Mine was sort of spaced out on weekly every Wednesday, so mine spanned October and then into next month, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's a difference. So there's obviously, I guess that's another great opportunity for virtual work experience, is that it's not necessarily something that you have to do like you do normally. Traditionally, you go for a week, 2 weeks at a company. You can actually do it sort of every day for a week, or you could do it once a week for a month or 2 months, which again, I guess gives lots of flexibility, and which is good. So in terms of actually, Holly and Amy, you obviously gave up your school holidays to do that. So how do you feel about that after having spent so much time in the last year in actually having to obviously sit in front of the screen to have your lessons? How did you feel about actually, giving up your holiday to do this? What made you think this is good?
Well, I mean, it was sort of a bit like, it was just the thinking of, do I really want to give up all them laying in bed, having like a nice laying in the morning? Or like it's just sort of getting the motivation to actually think this is going to help me, you know, like people like Sophie at school, they do go on about doing like work experience because it does help you a lot. So it's really just sort of trying to put that over all the nice laying in bed, having a late breakfast and just relaxing.
Well, that's good, and it's good that you're actually thinking that maybe by giving up a few lie-ins now, this could actually really be something that benefits me for the future. So obviously signing up to something like this, just to move on to the actual experience itself, how did you all feel when your first day? Because for me, obviously far too old to experience virtual work experience, but for me, I can remember what it felt like to go to work for the first day and actually physically turning up in you know, walking through the door and actually being there. And it can be a very nerve-wracking thing. You can't run away because you're physically there. Obviously, when you're doing something virtually, how did it feel to actually suddenly be in a room with whatever? Amy?
So for me, I've done a physical work experience with Morgan Sindall for about 5 months before this placement. So I actually found that a lot more nerve-wracking than the online thing. So my generation, we've kind of grown up with tech and that kind of thing. A lot of people think virtual work experience placements or talking in front of the screen is going to be scary, but for me, it wasn't. It was kind of relaxing to be at home and kind of in my own comfort as opposed to trying to have to go outside. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's good. That's good. And how did you feel, Fred?
Yeah, so also coming from a similar angle as Amy, having done in-person work experience, I'm actual like in-person work experience. I'm a lot better like just talking to people normally. Just like I can get along with most people. Just stick me in front of a camera or anything, I'm like a wreck. I was like maybe a year ago, it was an absolute it was horrendous. But actually being like, we got sent like, so you initially all meet up for the work experience on this big group call, and then you get split off into teams. And then when we first got sent into them teams, it was just really scary. But there was no like moderator. Helen Clements wasn't in it. It was just me and people I didn't know. So that was quite daunting. But once we sort of got over that little first meeting everyone, because it was scary at the start, like just looking at some blank screens and saying, oh, I don't know anyone. But once we got over that, yeah, it was really good. So that's definitely the scariest part.
Definitely. And once you've broken the ice like that and you've actually started speaking to people, I guess it gets easier from then on in. So now I know for some people who might be watching this or who may have signed up for a virtual work experience program, some people will have got to that first stage and actually thought, I can't do this, it's too scary. What would you say, for instance, say Holly, what would you say to somebody who is actually maybe like you know, a student at school and is actually thinking, I really want to do this, I really don't want to do this, but oh my goodness, I'm finding this really scary. What would your advice be to somebody who
You've just got to go for it, you know, it's just gonna, after you've done it, you're gonna have so much more skills. And you're going to have actually met these people who you're initially scared to talk to, but they're probably going to be really nice people and they're probably in the same position as you are, just looking at the camera going, oh, I don't really want to talk first. I don't want to put my camera on first. But yeah, no, you've got to just weigh up the advantages of what you're going to get from it and just try and push through it.
That's brilliant. Now, when it comes to virtual work experience, some people that I have spoken with have actually been skeptical. You know, part of it is the unknown, but they're skeptical, and they're actually saying, well, what do students actually get out of this? Is this actually a real experience? Because, you know, how can you call it a real work experience if you're not in the building? You know, for instance, if you're I'm trying to think of something now, like you want to be a chef, you're not actually in the kitchens cooking. You know, how can that actually be considered to be a real experience? Could perhaps you talk us through some of the actual program of actually what was involved with your programs, so that people can actually sort of see what the kind of typical day. So, for instance, Fred, your first day, you said that you started off by going into breakout rooms and you were talking to one another. But what kind of things did you actually do on your first day? And what was, I should say as well, what was your perception of what the program was going to be? And what was the actual reality? What did you actually do? What was the aim of the program?
I thought it was going to be, seeing as it was remotely, I thought it was going to be a lot less like solo based, me sat behind a computer doing just my own work. I thought it was going to be not as much about the teamwork aspect of it. When we, as I said again, got sent to them breakout rooms, after Helen spoke to us, we were then sent in to discuss how we were going to approach this project that she set. And from that point, I realised it was going to be a lot more about the communication side of it and the teamwork side of it, more than doing just the actual work.
And Holly, for you, when you actually started on your, because I think you were all set actual projects as part of your virtual work experience. So Holly, what was your project? What was the project that you were given?
We had to basically come up with we had to redesign a new scheme for, I think it was Foxhall Household Waste Recycling Centre. And none of us really had any clue what we were doing, because it wasn't like a proper civil engineering. Like, we didn't really have an architect for like a building or anything. It was just, here are some roads. You need to make this as efficient as you can. And it was really confusing, because it was definitely not what we were expecting. But like Fred said, it's not just you doing it by yourself. It's a lot harder online to sort of get the teamwork together, because you're not actually sat next to the people. So I guess doing this kind of shows that you're able to do it not only in person but also online when it's a little bit harder.
And so in terms of actually the people that you met, what would have been, if you'd been there physically, you would be meeting your employer and teams within the organization. So Amy, who were the kind of people who you met when you were doing this project, and how did you learn what to do?
Right, so with ours, we had to work on a actual building, a leisure centre. So we got to talk to architects, civil engineers, structural engineers, regional planning managers, and pretty much we got to talk to everyone from kind of lower down to higher up on the ladder. So in a real life work experience placement, you wouldn't get to actually talk to that many people, because you can't get that many people on site kind of when you're on site, because it's not really worth it. But virtually, you get to talk to a whole range of people with so much more information that they can tell you. And it's kind of just, it's a lot better, because you get a kind of a more well-rounded kind of slice of what work is like. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, isn't it? Because again, I suppose because there's not the travel aspect, and because it's virtual, it's a bit like, I work virtually all the time now, as so many of us do, is the fact that you can actually bring somebody into a meeting or to, one of your sessions, I suppose, for just a short period of time. It would be, okay, gang, this is Sarah, and she is a civil engineer, and she looks at this bit, and she's going to briefly talk to you about whatever. So I suppose that's where virtual experiences can actually be actually, as you say, Amy, really useful, because you get to meet so many more people. So in terms of the skills that you learnt, what do you think were the skills that, if any, that you actually picked up as a result of doing this? If I could ask Fred.
So within my team, I picked up the role of project manager, and I was also one of the only people who was like actually on the camera and actually had my microphone on. So when I first got sent to that little breakout room, it was sort of about learning a few like leadership skills, actually getting people to turn their cameras on and then delegating certain things. So definitely having like a taste of what sort of leadership roles were like is definitely one of like the attributes I acquired.
And Holly, what skills do you did you find that you actually picked up from a virtual work experience program?
Well, on the project we did, I was doing the civil engineer. I was sorting out all the drainage for the site. And as I'm not doing an engineering subject, that was like really scary for me. So I guess I've taken away a lot of sort of perseverance skills and not just thinking, no, okay, I'm not doing this. I don't know what I'm doing. And I guess it's sort of the teamwork and the communication and actually asking for that help from your team and just utilising everyone around you. And yeah, you do get a lot from it.
That's actually really important, because those kind of skills, it doesn't matter whether you're going to go into agriculture, law, I can't think of anything else at the moment, catering, whatever you're going to go to, they're obviously really what's known as transferable skills, aren't they? You know, we all in work need to learn how to negotiate, work in a team and communicate well. So again, if you're picking up those kind of skills on a virtual work experience program, I would say that would be something that will benefit you for the rest of your lives. Absolutely. And Amy, what skills did you find that you took away as part of the program? Because you've done more than one virtual work experience program, haven't you?
I've done 3.
So that obviously shows that it's been good for you. That's great.
Yeah, so skills wise, definitely kind of linking what both Holly and Fred said. So leadership skills, as well as patience and kind of perseverance to just keep going, even though it might be a little bit not what you're used to. It might be a bit tricky, but you've kind of got to be patient with everybody else and yourself with this. So
that's actually really good. Okay, we have got a question that's come up from somebody watching, and the question's come along and says, what was your biggest takeaway / learning from your virtual work experience? Now, if okay, I'd like to ask each of our students, and then I'd like to also ask Sophie. So if I could start off with, I'm going to pounce on Fred again. So what was your biggest takeaway from your virtual work experience program?
So as I said, didn't used to be that proficient at talking online, and my biggest takeaway was just pushing through that little bit of that awkward stage. It's just like really scary for me. And it's just pushing through that, and I've just learned to just commit to it now. Once I'm through that, I know everything's fine afterwards. But yeah, just committing to pushing through that awkward bit.
Well, chatting with you now, I think you were totally and completely experienced and an expert in the field. So well done, you. And Holly, what was your biggest takeaway from it?
I think mine's definitely the same as Fred, just the communication skills and just sort of learning how to sort of present yourself and talk to other people who you absolutely have no clue who they are. And it's just sort of starting off and then building them relationships as well.
Okay, that's again, tremendous life skills, I think you've both picked up. And Amy?
So this is a little bit different from the other two. So it's actually professionalism while working online. So in my group, I had to compile all of our work onto the presentation. So I had to learn how to use Prezi as well as company branding to kind of make a professional, well put together presentation that kind of stands out. And I think it's a really important skill, because when we go into the workforce, we'll be doing a lot of digital work. So kind of having that professionalism and that kind of company brand and company appearance to be kind of all in line with what they want is going to be really important for us.
Oh, sounds like you could teach me a few things on that score. That sounds brilliant, because I think because now our world is becoming so much more virtual, even when, fingers crossed, we come out of this soon and in a healthy way, I think it's quite obvious that so many companies will continue life with a mixture of face-to-face interaction and also virtual interaction. I don't think we'll ever go back to being just face-to-face. So if you can actually learn to do presentations that look professional and are really engaging, and you can do this virtually, I think that's going to be a massive skill. You can definitely teach me so much of that. But sorry, so well done, you guys. And Sophie, if I could just ask you from the school's perspective, how did you feel as a result of your students getting involved with virtual work experience? What did it mean from your perspective?
It confirmed what I'd probably already learnt in the last year, which is never underestimate what young people can achieve when they set really, really high standards for themselves. They will always do something better than you expect them to. And our students were giving up their half-term break, and you might think that they'd have online communication fatigue and be feeling like they need a rest from lots and lots of screen time, but actually students were more enthusiastic about that than I expected them to be, which again just goes to show that they really are looking for the best opportunities all the time. And there's never really been more of a crossover between school and work. If we're working, we're probably at home on Microsoft Teams. If we're at school, we're at home on Microsoft Teams, whatever we're doing. And so those skills can now be transferred from school to work, and our students get to see how they can transfer those skills with the virtual work experience programme. Last week's programme that some students took part in, one student said to me, I was really pleased that I did it because it stopped me being tempted to use my Xbox for a week. His words, not mine.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. So obviously, if you, so for instance, because for some schools actually getting involved with encouraging students to look at virtual work experience programs, there are concerns about, for instance, safeguarding and security. Was that something that came up for you at all?
Yeah, so we would typically have our students chaperoned by a member of staff if they're talking to an external person, particularly if they're under the age of 18. Whereas if you were doing real life work experience, you wouldn't have a member of staff from school there with you the whole time. So we liked the Speakers for Schools platform that Morgan Sindel have used for their virtual work experience, because they assign students a new email address for contact with the employer. All of the rooms where the students are working are recorded, and so they've got a number of safeguarding checks in place through the platform. So that reassured us an awful lot.
That's brilliant. I was going to say, in terms of actually preparing, the work that when it comes to normal face-to-face work experience, there's a lot of work for a school, isn't there? There is, in actually making the arrangements. How do you find the work involved in organising students to attend a virtual work experience? Is it more, less, different? How does that work?
I would say it's an awful lot less from the school. It's definitely more from the employer's perspective. But once the employers have got their programme up and running, they can use that for years on end. So once they've written a presentation to give to the students on the work they're going to do, that can be recycled for another group further down the line. So I would say it was an awful lot less actually for school. We try to still catch up with the students during their work experience weeks to just check that everything's going okay. Actually, that's even easier than normal, because we can have regular contact on Microsoft Teams to just check in that they're comfortable and they're happy with how they're working. I spoke to the odd parent to see how the students are working, but they worked quite hard, and they don't get lots and lots of breaks through the week, so it is real in a normal work experience. And so often when I phoned to speak to a student, they were in a meeting and their parents said they're enjoying it, but they're busy at the moment.
So in terms of if there's an employer watching this and they're actually thinking, ooh, I'd quite like to get involved with this, but I don't really, I don't know, would it be a good experience? Would it be worthwhile? How do I go about doing this? What would you say from that point of view? Because obviously you have lots and lots of links with employers at UTCN.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend watching Helen Clements from Morgan Sindel's interview on Careers and Coffee.
Oh yes.
So she had an interview back last year where she talks about the benefits and actually the work it took to get involved. Helen's experience has been that actually it takes less effort to get a virtual work experience programme up and running per student than it would be if you were to do it in person, because actually you can reach maybe 100 students, whereas in person actually for most businesses it would be really hard going to even include 10 students on site, because you might not have the office space for them. So I would certainly point you in the direction of that first of all, or get in contact with me. My contact details are on the UTCN website, or it's sophie.skip@utcn.org.uk, and I'd happily have a chat with you about what could make a good project for students to work in, because it needs to be something that you need to give them the challenge that's meaningful and grounded in the real world. Because if it's an overblown school project, you've listened to these guys talking for the last few minutes. They're bright, capable young people who want a challenge and want something that's grounded in reality. So you don't need to worry about it sort of emulating schoolwork. It needs to be maybe a problem that you want solving in your business, that you want a fresh pair of eyes or a different perspective on. Or a new way of looking at something. That could be an ideal place to start. And then it's just filling those students with the knowledge and expertise of the people that were within your business. And actually they know their jobs inside out and back to front, and are better at presenting that to these young people than probably they would give themselves credit for.
That's actually really useful and really, really helpful. So thank you for that. So just finally, because I've just realised I could chat with you guys about it, because it's really fascinating to actually find out what it's like from the students and the schools as to what virtual work experience has actually meant. And from listening to you, all of you, I would first of all say absolutely congratulations, and good for you to make the most of the opportunities that are out there. We're all living in an incredible and strange world at the moment. It's very alien. Goodness knows what it must be like to be a teenager and have your social life restricted. So I think I really take my hat off to you. I mean it absolutely sincerely, that you were actually getting out there and making the most of these opportunities. And I think from this, I would heartily say to any young person who is considering taking the plunge and actually joining a work experience program virtually, that from what you guys have said and from what Sophie said, this is definitely a really useful experience. And funnily enough, I was actually, when you're talking about a real project that has meaning to it, I was speaking to somebody this morning who is actually talking to, because a virtual work experience program doesn't need to be to a wide array of pupils. And I was actually talking to somebody this morning who's actually developed a virtual work experience program and an enterprise advisor. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, that's somebody from the business community who actually links specifically to a school to support them with business links and enterprise activities. And that particular enterprise advisor had worked with his local special education needs school to develop virtual work experience just for that particular school. So if anybody out there is listening, please do get involved. We need lots and lots of opportunities for young people. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you again very much for joining us all today, and I wish you every success in your future. You deserve it. Well done, you. Thank you for joining us today. So there we are. We've run over slightly, but thank you to the students of UTCN and Sophie for joining us today to talk about virtual work experience, the student and the school perspective. I really hope that's inspired people to actually want to get involved, whether you're another school, whether you're a student yourself. There are lots of opportunities for work experience, virtual work experience. Speakers for Schools is a platform that you've just heard has been recommended. If you sign up for Speakers for School, just go onto the internet and you can see a whole array of opportunities. For any employers who might be watching this and thinking that you would like to actually still be able to offer opportunities for work experience, but virtually, please do get in contact and we would be absolutely delighted. Sophie has kindly offered to speak with people. We are very happy to speak with people, and Speakers for Schools are happy to speak with people as well. So please do make contact. It is your future talent pipeline, so please do get involved. I'd like to say thank you today for Ashley for doing the technical part of the background, and I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. On Thursday, we will again, a slightly unusual take on Careers and Coffee. I'll be speaking with the enterprise advisor from Sir Isaac Newton College, one of the developers who works at his consulting company, IT consultancy company, and also some students from Sir Isaac Newton will actually be getting involved in asking the questions. So thank you again and goodbye.